Dragons are a returning mythical creature in the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Like Breath of the Wild, these ancient spirits have been spotted traveling through the sky, but in much higher locations than were possible in the previous game. In Tears of the Kingdom, you will not only be able to use dragon parts in cooking recipes to increase effectiveness and the duration of buffs, but also greatly boost your attack power by fusing them to your weapons to give them powerful elemental effects not found elsewhere. There's also the addition of a fourth dragon that is much harder to reach than the others. Each of the 4 dragons in Tears of the Kingdom flies around a set area in a loop that you can often spot in the sky as you travel. The 3 original dragons will alternate flying above the sky and floating into the depths through giant chasms, while the new dragon can only be found in the sky. Unlike Breath of the Wild, the Tears of the Kingdom dragons do not have a set schedule, and their path cannot be altered by fast traveling, resting, or sleeping until a different time, as they will remain in the same position during loading. In order to find them, you need to seek out the paths they loop and either wait for them to fly near you, or travel along their paths either above or below ground. The 3 elemental dragons take about 30 minutes to complete one loop, while the 4th, the light dragon, takes around 2 real-time hours to complete a loop of the entire map of Hyrule. The fire, ice, and lightning dragons mainly fly at a height of around 400 meters up into the sky, and with the addition of various sky islands and skyview towers that can launch you up to over 800 meters, you can use them to glide down from above to reach the dragons, or construct flying machines from Zonai devices to reach them whenever you may spot them. Be warned, the elemental dragons aren't actively hostile, but they do ward off interlopers by constantly creating elemental orbs that fly alongside them and can damage you if you get too close. In addition, both Dinral and Naydra are surrounded by extreme temperature zones, requiring 2 pieces of either heat guard or cold resistance when approaching them. Let's now go over each dragon's route individually. We'll cover the first 3 here, and then go into more specifics near the end for the light dragon, as that can get a bit spoilery. Dinral, the fire dragon, patrols the skies on the north side of Death Mountain, and coasts along the upper edge of Hyrule past the Akkala Tech Lab all the way to the Thiflo Ruins and the Great Hyrule Forest. You can often spot him appearing from the East Akkala Plains Chasm, directly east of the Ulri Mountain Skyview Tower, before he floats along the coastline towards the Akkala Ancient Tech Lab, and then cuts across west past Skull Lake and continues on the northern slopes of Death Mountain. He'll finally curve around the Thiflo Ruins Skyview Tower before disappearing into the nearby Drinnan Highlands Chasm. If you follow him underground, you'll find he takes a nearly identical route back through the depths, unlike the ice and lightning dragons. Naydra, the ice dragon, can be found patrolling around the Great Mount Lanayru, and will make a sweeping loop around the southeastern part of Hyrule from Heteno to Kakariko before looping underground. Naydra can often be spotted emerging from the Naydra Snowfield Chasm just to the west of the Mount Lanayru Skyview Tower. Once into the air, the dragon will coast to the southeast along the Lanayru Range and Walnut Mountain before passing by to the east of Hiteno Village and down to Kitano Bay, before sweeping to the west, flying south of Ebon Mountain. Nedra will then curve upwards before reaching the Rebella Wetlands Skyview Tower, heading north past the cliffs of Quince and straight to Kakariko Village, disappearing into the large East Hill Chasm on the village's east side. Once underground, Naydra will continue the loop back towards Lanayru Mountain by curving up and east at the edge of the border where the Rutala River is on the surface, before cutting back down near Lanayru Bay and south to the Naydra Snowfield Chasm to re-emerge before the mountain. Farash, the lightning dragon, is located in Hyrule's southwest regions, and will fly out of Gerudo Desert and along its large canyon, before traveling down the Great Plateau to the other side of Lake Hylia and going underground into the depths. Farash can be found emerging from the large East Gerudo Chasm on the southeast side of the Gerudo Desert, just south of the Gerudo Canyon Skyview Tower. The dragon will fly north and dip along the canyon, flying above it as it curves around the Skyview Tower and back down south, before cutting straight to the east. Farash will continue flying directly south of the Great Plateau and across the northern portion of Lake Hylia and its bridge, before arriving at the hills of Baumer Chasm. Once underground, Farash will take a long curved route back by skirting the borders of Lake Hylia, which is a giant rock wall in the depths, by traveling south and then west through the Faron Woods located on the surface. It will fly straight west across the depths version of the Faron Grasslands, and then fly south around the South Lomé Labyrinth, up past the Champion's Gate, and then back out of the Desert Chasm. Each of the dragons in Tears of the Kingdom, while immortal and invulnerable to damage, can be hit, most likely with arrows, to dislodge various dragon parts that can be used in a variety of ways. Once hit, a glowing white light will appear where the part spawns, and after a few seconds, it will jettison off the body down to the ground below, with a large light trail to follow. Depending on where you specifically fire your arrow, a different piece can be broken off. A dragon horn can be gained by shooting the frontal glowing horns. A shard of the dragon fang can be gained by shooting in the mouth. A dragon claw can be gained by shooting at their glowing claw tips under their body. A dragon scale can be gained by shooting most other points on their body. And a shard of the dragon spike can be gained by shooting their glowing spikes along their body or collecting them from the dragon's back without hitting them. Note that with the addition of the Sky Islands, Skyview Towers, and higher altitudes to reach, it's easier than ever to actually land on a dragon, as long as you wear the appropriate temperature-resistant gear when needed. Once you land, you'll find dragons are quite ambivalent to your presence. In fact, you can even walk along their body and find around 10 to 12 spike shards to loot, which usually respawn over time. While the dragons won't disappear after harvesting parts like in Breath of the Wild, after you hit them they'll stop glowing and no more parts will fly off until they recharge, after waiting about 10 minutes. If you're patient, you can simply park yourself on the dragon and wait for them to start glowing again. However, when going in and out of chasms, you may have to stand in precarious positions on their snout or behind their horns or mane to keep from falling off. Once you've harvested the parts that you need, you can return to the ground and begin making use of these dragon parts. There are two main uses for each part: weapon fusing or food recipes. Some parts are also needed for upgrades at the Great Fairy Fountains. Each has its own benefit, so consider the pros and cons of each. Weapon fusing will of course infuse your weapon with higher durability, a good deal of attack power, and the element that reflects the dragon you obtained the part from. The weapon will sometimes need to recharge its elemental properties if you attack too fast, but the delay is fairly small. Food recipes infused with dragon parts can increase the amount of hearts gained, and can greatly increase the duration of certain food buff effects up to even half an hour if you cook with a horn. You can see this full list of effects on our strategy guide on IGN.com. In addition to these effects, cooking with dragon parts will almost always guarantee a critical success, denoted by the additional musical cue during the cooking animation. Now that we've covered how to farm these parts, let's go over the specifics of how to reach the Light Dragon, with the aforementioned spoiler warning. The mysterious Light Dragon is a new dragon that appears in the skies when Link first awakens on the Great Sky Island and will slowly fly around the entirety of Hyrule in a long loop. Unlike the other three dragons, the Light Dragon will fly much higher, anywhere from 1,500 to 2,200 meters up into the sky. This will place it higher than the Great Sky Island's Room of Awakening, as well as both of the Water and Wind temples, making it extremely difficult to reach. However, by completing later main game quests such as locating each of the dragon's tiers or finding a way into the Korok Forest, the Light Dragon will eventually lower dramatically in altitude, down to around 700 to 800 meters. You can check out our walkthroughs and strategy guide on IGN.com for the quickest ways to complete these quests. Though the path will alter slightly depending on which height the dragon's flying at, it will generally weave around most regions of Hyrule, and generally curve around many of the Skyview Towers and Geoglyph locations as it does. Since it takes a much longer time to complete a loop of the map, about 2 hours, you may have to warp between various Skyview Towers and look high up to spot it. A quick tip for tracking it down as fast as possible is to go through the Korok Forest storyline until you unlock the quest titled Recovering the Hero's Sword. Tracking this quest will give you a moving map marker that will show you the Light Dragon's location at all times. For instance, here we are at the Elton Canyon Skyview Tower, and the marker matches up right here. Then it's just a quick launch, paraglide, dive, and float down to the dragon's back. That was a lot of information, but hopefully you found all of it useful. If there's more you need to know about Tears of the Kingdom, make sure to check out our interactive map and strategy guide on IGN.com. And while you're here, check out 11 advanced tricks to master. And for everything else gaming, keep it right here on IGN.